Well, welcome to the 700 Club. It does seem that Goldman Sachs alumni have a way of coming out on top. There was Robert Rubin, and there was Hank Paulson, and now there is Mr. Mnuchin. He's going to be the new Secretary of Treasury, and it's an important job, and he's a good friend of Donald Trump, and we think he'll make an excellent job. Interestingly enough, he did financing in Hollywood, and one of the movies he financed was that blockbuster called Avatar. So, I mean, he knows his way around both coasts. He's got a place out in California and one in New York, and he's worth a lot of money. But anyhow, the selection picks continue from Donald Trump. Another major announcement, he said he's leaving his business empire to focus on being president. He believes that's far more important than stay involved with his businesses. How he's going to accomplish that, I don't know. He's got to have some money to live on. He's used to living high and wide, and I think he still will continue to do that. Wendy?
Yeah, that move came as Trump is naming more members of his cabinet, including the very important position of Secretary of the Treasury. Heather Sells has more on the Trump transition.
A steady stream of visitors at Trump Towers this week provides a glimpse of the high-powered auditions for cabinet posts. Among the latest selections, Steven Mnuchin for Treasury Secretary. If confirmed by the Senate, Mnuchin will play a key role in shaping Trump's tax policy. Also, Wilbur Ross, a Wall Street financier, for Commerce Secretary, and Elaine Chao for Secretary of Transportation. She served as Labor Secretary under the second President Bush, and she's the wife of Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Trump also apparently offered a post to Robert Johnson, the founder of Black Entertainment Television. Johnson declined, saying that as entrepreneur, he didn't want to go into government bureaucracy, but also said he never thought Trump is a racist or anti-African American. For now, the biggest question is who will get the nod as Secretary of State. For days, Trump has been meeting with potential candidates.
The Secretary of State's role is so important to a president. He needs to choose someone that he's very comfortable with.
In addition to talking with Senator Bob Corker, Trump enjoyed an elegant dinner with Mitt Romney Tuesday night. Romney, despite calling Trump a phony and fraud during the campaign, now praising Trump for his victory in the election and his, quote, message of inclusion.
And I have to tell you, I've been impressed by what I've seen in the transition effort.
Also up for consideration for top diplomat, former CIA Director David Petraeus. Trump created a bit of a firestorm on Twitter Tuesday, tweeting that nobody should be allowed to burn the American flag. If they do, there must be consequences, perhaps loss of citizenship or year in jail. The Supreme Court has ruled that flag burning is constitutionally protected speech. Even so, many Americans agree with Trump, and Hillary Clinton also once tried to criminalize flag burning. One big win for Donald Trump, word of a deal on a campaign promise to keep jobs in America. This time, the Indiana air conditioning company Carrier.
Believe me, if I were in office right now, Carrier would not be leaving Indiana. That I can tell you.
Carrier had said it would lay off 1,400 workers and move to Mexico. Now it says it will keep nearly 1,000 jobs in the Hoosier state. It's a sign that Trump does intend to deliver quickly on his key campaign promises. Others that top his list: repealing Obamacare, fixing the immigration system, and strengthening the economy by cutting taxes and government regulations and bringing back jobs. Heather Sells, CBN News.
So far, I've been very supportive of the choices that he's made for various positions. He's picking some super guys and women, and he's getting a balance. He's got African Americans, he's got Asians, he's got all kinds of people, men, women, and so forth, from various backgrounds. It's an incredible array of talent, and he's going to hit the ground running. And I think his biggest obstacle is going to be these people who say, well, look, if you're really going to govern for all the people, you've got to accede to the Democrats' demands. You've got to make them happy and bring them under the tent. And the answer is no. We're not going to give you anything. We won the election, and we're going to put in the policies that the people want. And then after they're in, then we'll get together and we'll talk about what's going to happen next. But anyhow, he's doing a terrific job. And the thing about Secretary of State, I still think Petraeus is the best man for the job, although Rudy Giuliani is a good friend and he's had enormous experience overseas. We just don't know what deals he's made that might hold him up on the confirmation. I think that's the problem. Otherwise, he'd been a shoo-in for the job. Well, Donald Trump has also spoken out about another story, the deadly attack at Ohio State. John Jessup has that.
Thanks, Pat. ISIS is calling the OSU attacker a, quote, soldier of the Islamic State. And Trump tweeted in response saying, quote, ISIS is taking credit for the terrible stabbing attack at Ohio State by a Somali refugee who should not have been in our country. The deceased attacker, Abdul Razak Ali Artan, was an immigrant from Somalia. Investigators said they hadn't found evidence that ISIS was involved, but one of Artan's Facebook posts said the U.S. should make peace with ISIS if it wanted Muslims to stop carrying out lone wolf attacks. He also praised a radical Islamic leader, Anwar al-Awlaki. Pat?
Very hard to make peace with somebody that says he wants you dead, and that's part of his religion, is to kill you. How do you make peace with something like that? But this young man was brought to this country. He was given all the benefits of our great land. I think he was subsidized by the government. They paid him a stipend and paid his way at Ohio State. And he comes out and says, you've got to start treating Muslims fairly. I mean, how fairly could you be treated? And it's this mixed thing. But Anwar al-Awlaki was one of the most vicious terrorists. He was American-born, but he went on the dark side, and he was killed by a drone strike, I think, in Yemen. But he was terrible, and he advocated all kinds of violence against the citizens of America and against this nation. These people want to kill us. And unfortunately, the only way to get rid of them, you say, well, you have a superior ideology. We have a superior ideology, but they're not buying it. So the other alternative is to end their lives and send them on to those 72 virgins they talk about. John?
Pat, armed forces in Iraq are still fighting against ISIS, trying to force the terror group out of the city of Mosul. And as Chris Mitchell reports, the offensive to liberate the city has resulted in another movement, an exodus of refugees.
Already, thousands of refugees have tried to escape the ISIS rampage across Iraq. It's a trickle that could become a flood. Behind me is one of the many refugee camps throughout northern Iraq. 20,000 people live in this one alone, with another 30,000 in the vicinity. But experts warn when the city of Mosul falls, it could represent the greatest refugee crisis in decades.
There's a lot of potential for this to be catastrophic on the human scale.
Matthew Nowry leads Samaritan's Purse in northern Iraq. He says the internally displaced persons, or IDPs, coming out of Mosul today are different from the refugees who fled ISIS in the summer of 2014.
The IDPs that are going to be coming out of Mosul have lived 2+ years under the control of ISIS. And so they've seen what I believe is the worst terrorism the world has ever seen. And they have been influenced by ISIS.
He says that makes this humanitarian effort far more dangerous.
When you talk about 1 million+ people being displaced all over the desert here in Iraq, it doesn't take long for you to understand that there will be ISIS cells in those groups of people, in those groupings, which brings in a whole new set of challenges.
Despite the danger, he sees the crisis as an opportunity for the church, especially with the young people.
These youth have been watching ISIS for the last 2 years, and they know what they're being taught by ISIS. And they're about to be displaced into the region, and they're going to be watching to see who receives them and who serves them. And so we have taken it upon ourselves as an organization, and we believe that Jesus commands us to give a glass of cold water to our enemy and to serve. And so we want to be there. We want to be the hands and feet of Jesus Christ when these children and when these adults, whether it is cells of ISIS or not.
Nowry says what's needed most now is prayer.
The situation is incredibly complex. And I'd ask the church back in America, in the West, first and foremost to pray. We don't have all of the answers. We don't know how to remain completely secure. This is a dangerous calling. But I'd ask for prayers for the people themselves that are going to be displaced, that God would soften their hearts now, that they'd be receptive to the message that so many of Jesus' followers are going to be out in the desert here in Iraq trying to provide.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Northern Iraq.
Thanks, Chris. Well, back here at home, raging wildfires and hurricane-force winds covering around 15,000 acres sent people fleeing for their lives in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. The fires have killed at least 3 people, sending over a dozen others to the hospital with burns or smoke inhalation. And Dollywood, one of the area's largest tourist attractions, was forced to close temporarily. Officials say they haven't seen a fire like this in years.
There were times last night that we had wind gusts in excess of 87 miles an hour. That is hurricane force. That is nowhere to be when trying to fight a fire.
The fire has destroyed at least 150 buildings, including churches. Rains have helped, but firefighters have braced themselves for quite a long fight ahead. Well, by now you know, or should know, cigarettes are bad for your health. But as Lori Johnson reports, shocking new statistics reveal just how deadly tobacco use really is.
Most of us understand cigarette smoking can lead to lung cancer. Turns out that's just the tip of the iceberg. Disturbing new data shows smoking or chewing tobacco also leads to an astounding 11 other types of cancer of the mouth and throat, voice box, esophagus, stomach, kidney, pancreas, liver, bladder, cervix, colon and rectum, and a type of leukemia. Tobacco use is so harmful, the CDC tells us it's responsible for 40%, nearly half of all cancer diagnoses and a third of all cancer deaths, making it the #1 preventable cause of cancer and cancer deaths. Despite these ominous statistics, the good news is tobacco use in America is at an all-time low. Currently, 36 million Americans smoke. That's about 15%, the fewest since the CDC began collecting data in 1965. Smoking rates remain highest among men, people living below the poverty level, and people without a high school diploma. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Thanks, Lori. Pat, back to you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've spoken on this many times. I'll say it again. The United States government, at least as what I understand even today, is subsidizing the growing of tobacco. We have quotas, we have set-asides, we have federal crop loans to people who grow tobacco. And all the way down the line, this is clearly 40% of all cancers in America is caused by tobacco. Not just lung cancer, but all those other cancers that Laurie talked about. It's time to ban it. I figured once they got below 50% of the population smoking, then we could hit it hard, and that's exactly what's been happening. Little by little by little, the percentage of the Americans who smoke has gone down, 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 and to a point where they are no longer a major block in terms of voting. Now, what should we do? It's so simple. But it would take some creative thinking like Donald Trump does. We've got to say, look, you guys are in business. You farmers are good people. You're out there growing tobacco, and that's your livelihood. So we understand that. And for the next 7 or 8 years, we will not take any taxes from you at all, and you can grow any crop you want to as long as it's legal, except tobacco. And we'll take away the subsidies, but at the same time, we will charge you no taxes. Same thing with the cigarette companies. You say for 7 years, you have a tax holiday. You can build up all the money you want to during that period of time, build up your reserves, and redeploy it into something that's more wholesome. And there are other things that people can do. They can produce fertilizer. They can grow corn. They can grow wheat. They can grow soybeans. They can grow all kinds of things. But then, at the end of that time, you say, from that moment on, the production and the sale of tobacco in America is going to be illegal. And in addition to that, we're not going to allow you to export this to countries like Indonesia and hook those kids over there, which is what we're doing right now. little children overseas in Indonesia and these populous countries are being hooked on tobacco because that's the next generation of smokers. There's no question it is an evil thing and it must be stopped, and we must have a law that prevents it. But instead of just cold turkey, we say, we give you a tax incentive, and over the period of time, you can build up enough money to begin to do something else. And these farmers in North Carolina and Kentucky and so forth that are growing tobacco will now have an alternative and enough funds to get into something more productive. And ladies and gentlemen, it's got to be done. We can't, if 40% of all the cancers in America are caused by tobacco, it's time we say no more.
Amen. You know, I was just in New York the last couple of days, and you're out on the sidewalk and you're constantly dodging plumes of smoke. It seems like everyone on the streets of New York is smoking. I know that's not true, but it seems like
it's $7 a pack up there. They've got so many taxes, it doesn't seem to stop.
It doesn't seem to stop.
Yeah.
I know. I even took the subway. Are you proud of me?
I am. I used to ride the subway back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I worked in Wall Street, and I lived up around 82nd Street or wherever it was. Yeah.
It's still the greatest city. It's New York.
It's
so
a lot
much
of fun. It's a very exciting city. Yeah, it really is. And with Trump in, I mean, hey.
Yeah.
Did you visit?
We did not drive. We didn't do a drive-by of Trump Tower, so we figured it'd be pretty busy around there.
It's
but
terribly busy. But
yeah.
I tell you, it's a wonderful place at Christmas time. The whole city lights up, and they sing, and it's just and the stores. It's gorgeous.
Walked by Macy's, and they have this huge sign lit up that just says "Believe," and so it was great to be up there right now.